when you're achieving your goal, it's not about the goal, it's about the person that you become. And I realized the person that I want to become needs to be good at connecting.
This is Denzil Jones, a 23-year-old serial entrepreneur who's built £1 million business portfolio through his ability to connect people.
A lot of people think they have to create something from scratch to make money, but I also even been a flow of money and opportunities. A lot of businesses in life which are slept on are middleman businesses.
From financial struggles growing up to getting into the property space at 15 years old, through to putting together events to inspire his generation. Through the Gen Z Club, he's been able to become the type of person that can see his vision come to life. What did that period in the trenches actually look like for you?
Rejection has taught me more than anyone has, learning what not to do. Now, your network can be your net worth once applied properly. Right, because
we sat down to dig deep into his story, the themes that connect everything he does, and find out what it took to get to where he's at today.
One thing I always say is that a real entrepreneur can lose it all and make it back. If you can stick to something for at least 10 years, it's impossible not to be successful.
Yeah, man, it's interesting because we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
And, maybe 2-3 years at this point. But it's only really leading up to this and in preparation for this that I feel like I've really gotten to know you properly.
Yeah.
And it's sick, bro, because you're a very impressive guy. And as I've been telling you now as well, I think you're someone who has a lot more to give and a lot more to share than you normally allow yourself to. So yeah, man, excited to dig into the journey. There's a bunch of different angles I want to touch on. But before even opening anything else, who is Denzil and what does he do?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And as you mentioned, we've known each other for a while now, so it's really good to sit down and put our minds together. But to summarize, my name's Denzil, 23 years old, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I have a few businesses, some being in property, some being in consulting. But I think my main talent, which we kind of spoke about earlier, is being a connector, being a builder. So I'm just really focused right now on building my brand, continue to improve my connections, my network, and just make that long-term impact. Here for a long time. So yeah.
I love that. And I love how you managed to, include almost like a thesis of how you choose to live within that. And we'll dig through it a lot, but even to start off, I was telling you right before, sometimes I like to look for golden threads.
Yeah.
Right? Like the thing that connects everything else along the story. And as I was looking into you, as I was seeing, the journey you've been on and being able to understand it better, I realized that the golden thread for you was always connecting with people, networking, making introductions, and even what you do. We'll touch on the property side later, but that has a lot to do with the person to person angle.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people growing up have that mentality of I do it all by myself. I want to be a self-made millionaire. But I think with me, I've always seen the power in unity. And I feel like that's why I've always, my whole life, just been a connector, whether it's my friends organizing holidays, whether it's organizing football sessions. Everyone knows me as the glue and the connector, even within my family. And I think, again, it's all about your character types. I'm quite extroverted, and I think I just find joy in seeing people come together and also empowering people through connecting, man. So that's something I always do, man. And I think, as you mentioned with the thesis, it's like a lot of people were defined by industries or our businesses, but I think it's you as the person first, and then your business is an extension of yourself. So that's why I kind of led with that as well.
Exactly that, bro. You are the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And being able to, it's cool, right? Because you not only had the self-awareness to identify that within yourself, but also the know-how and ability to actually put that into practice in a way that is able to make you money.
Yeah.
Not just through what you're doing with property, but also Gen Z Club and other things we'll touch on.
Yeah.
But a big part of that, and really where I wanted to start, is networking events, right? Because I know you have a whole story with those, and you've been to them since early. You've put them on yourself. You have smaller, tight-knit groups that you've taught as well. So yeah, I'd love to know a bit about your relationship with them and how that changed over time.
Yes, I think if I go about when it started, I think, as I mentioned, growing up, because I didn't have the best financial situation, I always looked to seek advice and knowledge from people who are doing better than me. And I didn't realize at the time, but that was a form of networking, because that person might give me an idea or a mindset shift which will now allow me to achieve the next goal I have in my life. So I remember around 15 years old, there was a lot of friends, 15 to 17, I can't remember the actual age, but there was a lot of friends that I had who weren't on the right page, let's say. They weren't doing things that were aligned with my future plans. But I had a couple of friends who were. And I thought, look, this group of people that we have where we're keeping each other accountable, why don't we actually form this into a little group? And I just started like literally going to Starbucks. I had about 15 people come to Starbucks and just network. We're just talking about business, about life, about our goals. And I think what started as like a little movement ended up becoming to the Gen Z Club, which we'll talk about later. And I think throughout my life, I've always been that person who does that. You know, even like what I was kind of mentioning to you, what I was mentioning to you is that, for example, I like football and a lot of my entrepreneur friends do. But a lot of times you get caught up in business. We haven't got time for football. So I put a story up saying, guys, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to play football, and now we do weekly sessions. Similar with my faith, you know, Christian. Again, a lot of us put business before our faith. I put a story up, guys, let's do an entrepreneurs in Christ meetup. And now I've got a whole group chat, we do weekly Bible sessions. I think that's because I just see the value in unity, in connecting, in team, and I think that's something I'm always going to continuously do. And I think naturally, because that's the type of person I am, I think one thing that I've always learned in life is that when you're achieving your goal, it's not about the goal; it's about the person that you become. And I realized the person that I want to become needs to be good at connecting. And that's why I feel like with all my businesses, as you mentioned, there's actually an element of networking or connecting the dots. You know, whether I do get paid for it or not, whether it's just me helping my friends with their businesses, I think just connecting is so powerful. And I think Naval Ravikant, one of the best thought thinkers, says, society pays you for what you're able to provide at value at scale. And it just makes you think, look, if you can provide value and you can connect people, which is so valuable, naturally society will pay you for it anyways. And that's why I do it also. So yeah.
Quoting Naval, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Because even, man, you know, again, digging into your journey, and, you know, I watched quite a bit of your other podcasts, the content that you put out yourself in preparation for this. And one of the things I picked up on early on was that you had a mentor.
Yeah.
And that's when you started going to these kind of networking events and putting yourself in these rooms, right? Because naturally, I feel like, I mean, maybe it's just my impression, but people normally would start going to these kind of networking events around university time when they're looking for jobs,
Yeah.
potentially, right? Whereas you, by the time you were in university, when these events were happening, you were the one putting together the events
Yeah. Yeah.
because you had all these experiences, etc. So, like, if you look back at, I don't know, the 15, 16-year-old version of yourself that used to go to these events, how do you think that kind of experience kind of built up to what ended up becoming the Gen Z Club?
No, really good question, man. I think it's because I really saw the value and impact that it had on someone like myself. And with me, I'm someone who always puts people first. And I thought, look, if this can help change my life, and I saw the trajectory I was going on, it would be selfish of me not to do this for others, you know. And I feel like a lot of people are born in certain privileges where they have a good network. They've got, you know, rich family members, they go to maybe schools of other wealthy people. But a lot of me and my friends, we didn't have that. Like the only person I knew that was rich was footballers I saw on TV or rappers or things that, again, I didn't really understand business to a high level. I didn't really know that you can make this amount from business. I remember my goals were literally by 40 years old to be, I remember I used to say by 20 years old on 20K a year, 30 years old and 30K a year, 40 years old, 40K. That was literally my goal. I didn't really understand the potential of making 40K a day, you know, and I think that's really about the network and exposing yourself to different opportunities. So leaning off your question, I remember when I went to one or two of my first events, I saw the impact. I was writing on my notes, and I've actually got in my notes. I think it was in 2017 or 16. I wrote in my notes this event structure that they had and what I would change it to. And I just wrote it down. I didn't look at it for time. When I hosted my first Gen Z event, it was the exact same structure that I wrote back in that the 20s or whenever the year was. And it made me think like, wow, like it's a full circle moment because I remember seeing that. I took little things from it. For example, like in the Gen Z Club, we do like speed pictures. You come on stage and you pitch your business. That's because when I went to one of the events, I pitched my business and I got a client from it. So I thought, look, let me do this for other people. So I looked at elements that I did like and applied it to my events. And yeah, man, it's been very beneficial.
Oh, that's sick, man. And even, you know, within that, as a kid going to these kinds of events where you're someone who realistically compared to the rest of the room, you're not really in a position to be able to offer too much,
Yeah.
right? You're still kind of learning, building yourself up. And I've heard you speak about this concept of like giving versus taking,
Yeah.
right? So that's definitely something I wanted to touch on as well. So how do you approach and how have you approached like relationship building?
Yeah, really good question, man. So I think relationship building is all about the value that you can provide. Because yes, there's certain relationships that we have, such as your brothers and sisters, where that's not a relationship of exchange. It's more like that's your family member, or your brother sister. When you come into the real world, as much as we say people are here for us, which they are to an extent, everyone really cares about themselves first, right? And so it's all about value. And I've seen it from the opposite end. Now I've built up my brand and stuff, and people come to me, Denzel, I need this, I need this, I need this. I don't even want to network with you because it's like you're not even. Are you asking me if I'm even okay? Like you're just saying, Denzel, I want this. You're assuming, right? So I remember I used to approach like, what type of value can I provide? And I think in society we think the only value that we can provide is monetary. But I genuinely believe you can learn from anyone and from anything. I've learned so many things from my little cousin till like 10, 12 years old. Something that is, because again, at our level, we might overthink, we might try to rationalize things too much, but they just might have such simple logic, which can now make things so clear. So back like with these people, again, I was about 15, 16. Even my mentor, for example, when I got my mentor, he was about 60. And he was so, you know, he was so wise, but he just didn't know how to implement that wisdom into modern day society. And I saw that as a way I can add value, which was now doing his social media for him, helping him to for webinars, helping him to speak and understand young people because he doesn't really know how to do that. That's my form of value. Even like till today with my clients, what I do is, let's say for example, I don't know, I've had a conversation with them and they tell me they've got two children who likes Chelsea. I might say that, oh, did your children watch the Chelsea game? Always remember that one or two things and just offering value. Value doesn't have to be something that you're giving them to make more money. It's just something that will actually make them look at their phone and be like, smile. A simple happy birthday. I'll message all my clients happy birthday, and that's because when people realize that you care about them, they need to like you, know you, and trust you. They're gonna like you after that. They want to know you from that, and they're now going to trust you. So I think when it comes to building relationships, it's about how can you honestly have that connection with people because people buy from people. And I think the more you can build that rapport, it will benefit you in so many ways. I think lastly, off that, it's the compound effect of relationships, which is so important as well. A lot of people expect immediate value straight away. I'll give you an example. We met 2, 3 years ago. We used to speak here and there, and 3 years later, we're now doing a podcast with each other. If we didn't show each other enough love or support, this podcast episode probably would have happened. And I think that's all about that exchange of value. People always think if I'm not benefiting from it now, I'm going to take it seriously. But so many examples in my life where it might have been a young person who came to my Gen Z event, provided value for me, they're now like my editor. And if I now didn't take them seriously at the time or thought, oh, what do you have to offer to me? I won't have a good editor, for example. So, yeah, it's all about value and relationships, man.
1,000%. No, I echo everything you said, and also like just to add to that, I think it really comes down to the emotions that you're able to help people feel.
Yeah.
Right. So what you were describing about knowing they support Chelsea or birthdays and all of this, it's like in the end of the day, people remember how you make them feel more than they remember what you did or said.
100%.
So if you're able to even going on that bandwagon, people enjoy speaking about themselves.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who knows how to listen, knows how to ask the right questions, knows how to get people talking, get people interested, they're gonna like you more for it.
Mm.
And yeah, that's always gonna help along the way.
Yeah. And I think it's also about understanding the type of person that they are.
For sure.
Because I feel like everyone tries to act the same way with every person, but everyone's so different. Right? I know some people are very emotional. So when I'm talking to them, it might be with a softer tone, understanding their feelings first. I know some people, like especially some of my clients. I got this one client, a very successful man. He doesn't want me to ask him how his day is. It's just straight numbers, logic. So I've got to talk to him in that way. And again, this is about and a really good book, How to Influence People. Really understanding how people talk and how they want to be seen, how they want to be spoken to, is such a big skill. Because again, I think in society as well, we have a generation where we misinterpret a lot of things. We think that if someone said this, they feel this way about us. But you go realize that we're all wired so differently, different upbringings, different life experiences. Some people have trauma for certain reasons. So where someone might be more, I guess, reserved, you might see it as, they're being rude and blunt. But that just might be how they are. And I think understanding that will actually help you build stronger relationships as well.
Yeah, 1,000%. And piggybacking off that, you built a whole business on relationships, connecting people, putting people in rooms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Gen Z Club wise, I've heard you speak about it quite a bit. Obviously, I've seen and been aware of throughout the time. But I'd love if you could kind of break down the evolution of it, let's say up until like end of last year, for example, from when it started until there? Because I know you went through different phases as well as a business.
Perfect. And I think what I want to do throughout this as well is kind of identify the common pain points, because again, my business is about solving problems. Now, firstly, I didn't think of it from a business angle. I was trying to solve a pain point, which was connecting young entrepreneurs and innovators together in a room. There wasn't really many events, or I didn't really know any events that were doing them. So I thought, how can I create an environment where people can come together? And started off with the Starbucks room, then during COVID, did it through the Clubhouse, and now it's all of that accountability. So that's the first pain point. Now, with that pain point led to a roadblock. We wasn't really monetizing it. Yes, we done our events, we were charging money for tickets, but as you probably know, venues are expensive.
Yep.
So by the time we pay over our costs and stuff, we would barely break even. So we thought the best way to overcome that is by doing more and more events, which we were doing, but again, still we're making a few £100 profit per month. Then we now had to identify another pain point, because as I mentioned from Naval, if you can provide enough value at scale and solve problems at scale, you can get paid for it. And we realized that what we're doing by getting a lot of Gen Zs into one environment is solving a pain point for corporates. Because a lot of corporates can't target Gen Z. They don't speak Gen Z's language. A lot of Gen Zs might see a bank and be like, I don't trust you. So we thought, how can we now package this into a way where we can now connect, the same about connecting, same thing with connecting Gen Zs to these corporates. And that now became our business model, where we provide enough value to the Gen Zs where they come to our events and they join our mailing list and they become a member of the Gen Z club. But then we also package it in a nice way where corporates can now access these Gen Zs. And so the way the Gen Z was able to be monetizable was when we now saw it as, look, we'll come to a company like, look, you guys are trying to recruit Gen Zs through Indeed. You're getting a couple of applications and it's not really working out. If you now put yourself in front of us as the trusted voice of Gen Zs, you now got 500 Gen Zs who come to the event who you can now market yourself in front of. And not only that, the people who are now going to be posting on TikTok, on Instagram, and their friends and their friends' friends. And so now we'll go to banks and different companies and be like, look, this is our offering. But again, before we present our offering, we need to understand their goals first, because again, if some people want recruitment, we got to come from a recruitment angle. Some people just want exposure and brand awareness to come from that angle. And what we'll now do is package it into an offering. And again, we start undercharge ourselves and charge only like a few £100. But when we realize that, and simple acts what Moji says, work with wealthy clients, they pay better. If I'm charging a bank £25,000 and these are making billions and billions a year, what is that to them? So now we was able to now increase our pricing and charge these large amounts, because these corporates will actually see the value in it. And that's kind of like how Gen Z was able to revolutionize them and become what it is today. We used to do events across the country, but again, we kind of hit a roadblock where it was like, look, we're getting kind of drained from all of these different events. So we said, look, instead of doing 12 events a year, why not do 4 events a year, but do it at a larger scale? That's going to now be more attractive to these companies, because instead of having 12 events of 100 people, why not do 4 events with 500 people in each event, 600 people in each event? So again, with business, it's all about problem solving, understanding pain points, understanding their goals and their objectives. And then one thing I would like to say is, like, you want to fit your service within their ecosystem, because if it's a nice to have, they're not going to really spend a lot of money on it, But if it's fitting within their ecosystem of, let's say, recruitment, so for example, we've had companies where they'll try to recruit someone, get 5 signups, we do 1 email, we get 200 signups. And we've now fit our service in their ecosystem, and now we can command any price because we know that we provide the value that they can't access, So that's kind of like how it was able to form.
Oh, that's sick, man. And we've spoken about this as well. I co-founded a community myself, Cheat Codes Community. And yeah, like it was a amazing experience. But like you mentioned, the event side is not a profitable model. It's something that has a lot of costs, as you said. In the end of the day, yes, you're selling tickets, but the same way you said, like, 25K to a bank making billions a year is not much. A £20 ticket to someone who is, scraping by, a uni student, etc., is something more significant, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you about the event side of things in general, right? Because it's something I'm interested in, but like as a business model, especially, with the B2B side being more dubious, right? Do you think it's a business that's worth kind of running, the event side?
100% if done correctly, right? Because especially, let's look at this at a scale, right? A lot of the companies who are doing these exhibition shows and Excel and stuff, they're seven-figure businesses, and the reason is because yes, the cost might be heavy, but the model that we now have is our ticket sales will cover our costs, right? That's the goal. You know, if we can make our ticket sales cover our costs, we're in a good position because then we can now charge these companies tens of thousands of pounds, and that's all going to be profit. I think when it comes to running an event, there's so many ways you can monetize it. Number one is building your brand. You know, for example, when I go on stage in the Gen Z Club as the founder in front of 500-600 people, that's building trust and authority with me, which can now benefit from other businesses. Number two, I'm getting presented a lot of opportunities because again, everyone's coming to my events and they see me as the go-to person now, and that's allowing me to have that, I guess, authority in the marketplace. Number three, you can monetize it from different angles. You can do it from pre-event marketing. You know, some people will be like, okay, cool, we've got an event coming up. Let me be posted in your email list for marketing. During the event, having your stands at the event, and there's two ways you can monetize it. You can have the big corporates who could be paying you tens of thousands of pounds. We can also have small businesses who will be paying you to get access to your community as well. And then after the event, like post marketing, how can we now get the traffic from the attendees, package it, and present more business traffic to your business? Sorry. So again, I think once done executed properly, events business is very lucrative. But I always say that your events business is now also a vehicle that you can branch many things from it. Because again, in that period where let's say we're doing 4 events, we might now do a small mini event, or we might do like a case study, or we might help a company with a little bit of a recruitment. But that only happens from the event or bring people. Because right now the new currency is attention, is people. So if you can provide and get 600 people, 700 people, 1,000 people in one room, that is very big in today's society, especially where now everyone's just online, stay at home. If you can bring 100 people, 1,000 people in person, especially with a specific particular niche, that's another important thing as well. You know, we know that with the Gen Z audience, so people want Gen Z. Some people they might do it for doctors, for dentists, but when you own that niche and you can provide value to that at scale, very profitable business. You know,
No, I love that. And especially as you said, how you can branch out and have different opportunities that come from the fact that you're getting people into a room together.
yeah, 100%.
And, even based on that, another concept I wanted to ask you about is just like community as a whole, right? Because essentially, the way I see it, they definitely overlap, but you can choose to view the business as a community and you can choose to view the business as a business,
Yeah, of course.
right? And of course, again, there's overlap, but how have you kind of chosen to approach it, right? Because like you said, in terms of it being a community, you go up there on stage, you speak to people, like boom, that's points for Denzil. But equally, when you're pitching to corporates and collecting a multiple 5-figure bag from them, that's the business side, right?
Yeah.
So how does that interaction kind of look like in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and clearly speaking to them in different ways and getting repetitive feedback loops, right? So I need to know that from the consumers, or the way the businesses are going to work by getting consumers, or should I say the B2C side, so the customers into our events. Now, I'm approaching that as a complete separate business to the B2B side. So we're in the business of getting people to my events. So how am I going to do that? By creating hype, creating urgency, providing a memorable experience, having amazing guest speakers. And that's all going to be done through feedback. I need to know what's going to get people into the room and what's going to get people to enjoy that experience. Now, from the B2B side, I need to understand as that ICP, what is their goal? What are they actually struggling with? They're struggling to speak to Gen Z, to get trust with Gen Z. And what does success look like to them? You know? And then you can now put the two together because I now know that, okay, cool, look, they want to be able to, provide value to Gen Z to get that trust. Gen Z's want to learn from people at these big corporate banks. So one of the ways I can do that maybe is by getting someone that's a C-suite at, for example, a bank, and they can speak on stage to our Gen Zs. So Gen Zs get the value from the C-suite that's speaking, and then the company gets value because they've now built that trust and authority with the Gen Zs. It's all about understanding that. Business is all about understanding the pain points and providing a solution for that, if that makes sense.
I love that. And it goes back to, again, to the golden thread of connecting people with each other and different opportunities to be able to benefit. And even, something we were speaking about earlier, the quote, your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I was talking about this with my friends the other day. A lot of the cliche sayings that we hear, they are very true, but I think they get taken out of context. Now, your network can be your net worth once applied properly, right? Because I can now know or have grown up with 10 footballers, but if I don't provide any value to them and they just know that I'm there for their money, is it really my net worth? No. But if you can be very intentional with your network, but that trust and provide value to your network, then with applied action, it can represent your net worth. Because another example, I can now maybe have friends who have rich dads or rich uncles, but doesn't mean that that's going to affect my net worth. If I now show myself as someone that's of value, in for example, one of my other businesses is property, and they know a lot of people in their network who want to get into property, me now applying my value and getting them into my network, then it will result into increasing my net worth, if that makes sense. So the saying is true at a macro level, but you got to actually work out the micro actions you need to take to actually see it come to fruition.
1,000%. Yeah, it's what we were saying before. I think it's about what you can offer to those that you know, not necessarily who you know per se.
Yeah,
Right, because if you're someone who's just there and you use the footballer example, right? Like maybe you are genuinely friends with them and like, you'll go out together, you'll enjoy life together, they might cover your dinner. But in the end of the day, if you're actually, it sounds bad to say trying to monetize that relationship, but
yeah,
like, able to have a monetary exchange there, it's only when you're able to offer value,
yeah.
and being able to connect through that. But I mean, just to start wrapping on events then, like how have you seen the biggest difference between attending events and going to other people's events and showing up and being able to connect with people in that way versus hosting them yourself?
Good question. Really good question. So I think one thing I've noticed recently, actually, and what we've now made of more of an impact to implement to Gen Z is more so the interactive element. I feel like when I used to go to a lot of events, although don't get me wrong, I love learning, but sitting in an event for 3 hours to turn people speak can be a bit boring. So what we've now intentionally done is have loads of different pockets for networking, for activities, having different things that people can do. Little things like getting people to come on stage and pitch their business. So I think it's not just about providing the value from the speakers and everything like that, but it's also about making it a fun experience. Like it's all about with a lot of things in life. It's about the experience that comes with it because nothing will necessarily be of value to someone a lot of times unless there's the experience that comes with it. Right? You can all say that I don't know. Fort Park is a good place, but if you don't actually have a good experience with it, and you don't actually go on the ride, it's not going to be a good place. Same with my events. I could have got the best events in the world, if you're not actually talking to people, if you're not interacting, if you're not learning, it's not going to be a good event for you. So I think what I've now tried to do is actually put myself in these attendees' shoes and actually go back to one thing I do a lot is attend a lot of events myself, like masterminds and conferences, because I like to one keep on learning, but number two, really put myself into attendees' shoes. Like I was at an event not too long ago, and it was very valuable. Don't get me wrong, very valuable, but I was so bored. And it got to a point where the value, I think after about 2 hours, my boredom outweighed the value.
Mm.
So like there were so many gems, but I was very bored. It's not because I wasn't interested, but it's because I was sitting in the same place for 3 hours. So that made me think, okay, cool. That's me who I've now developed that discipline to withstand long periods of time, let alone someone who's just getting into self-development. Okay, cool. Now it made me think, okay, cool. With the Gen Z events, instead of having a break after 2, 3 hours, let me have a break every 45 minutes, for example. Just so I can really understand from the ICP's point of view of what needs to implement to make it a really good experience.
No, that's very well put. And you mentioned they're on masterminds, courses, mentors.
Yeah.
I know you've invested a lot into those. What would you say is the thought process behind that? Like what made you actually go like, okay, this is a good financial decision for me to commit to once a year, twice a year, that I'm gonna have this money aside to spend on this thing?
Yeah, I think success leaves clues. And one thing that someone said to me is that if you're not willing to invest into yourself, don't expect people to invest into you. And I feel like it's because a lot of people in society have that perception of if you're paying for a course or mastermind to scam. We got to realize in this world, everything is information. If someone's trying to buy a house, they need to pay a solicitor because they have that sort of information. If someone wants to get that private healthcare, they're going to pay for a private doctor because they've got that information. If someone wants to lose weight, they're going to pay for a PT because they had that information. So if I want to progress my business, I want to pay for someone who has progressed in their business because I'm paying for that information. Now, yes, we have some bad eggs who might ruin it for people who are selling actual valuable information, and that's why that scammer word is coming. But I'm really a big believer that if someone has done what you want to do, why not learn from them? Because that 5 years and 6 years of testing it, and I think what validated my experience, because again, a lot of things in life, it's easy for me to say now, but I had a really good validation of that experience where I was trying to do property for like 6, 7 months. No deal was done. I paid for a mentor, not my first mentor, my second mentor. Um, and from that, I done a deal that same month or the month after. And that just validated my experience that sometimes it's just one person or one thing that someone might say that will help that. So I think back to your question with the masterminds, because I've invested, tens of thousands of pounds every single year into masterminds. And number one for the network, right? Again, hosting the Gen Z club, a lot of times, which I'm very grateful for, people come to me for advice. Denzel, how do I get into property? How do I get into business? So I'm doing, I'll say 80% talking, 20% listening. When I go to these masterminds, I'm a student. Most of the masterminds I go to, I'm the brokers in the room because all of these businesses are doing the millions and millions, tens of millions, 20 millions, 30 million a year. So I'm a student. I'm learning, I'm understanding, and not just from what they're telling me, observing how they're moving, how their operations working from a marketing angle. Because again, no one really teaches us this. People just say like, okay, cool, start a business and go with the flow. But actually working out how to hire, what operations have in place, how to maintain standards, how to work out X, Y, Z. And I think so these masterminds always allow me to expand my business, expand my knowledge and my network. So whenever I go to a mastermind, I'll see a massive increase in my business. So every year I'm going to continue investing into masterminds because it's so beneficial. I literally came back from one last week and it was such a life changer as to also what's possible. Because I think a lot of the times as well, our environment and our upbringing limits our beliefs, right? So as I mentioned earlier, my goal was to make 40K per year by 40 years old. When I'm around people in my mastermind who are spending 40K a week on ads, it's just crazy to me, right? So again, it's now that's why I feel like I've been able to hit higher numbers in my business because what I now thought as my yearly goal, whatever, I've now seen the months, right? And that's because of intentional expansion of my mindset. 'Cause I think a lot of people have the right skill set, but the wrong vehicle, right? A lot of people they know how to make money, how to connect people, but they don't really know the opportunity that they can apply it to. But when you just talk to someone that's already done it, it's a lot easier to follow that blueprint.
Oh, 1000%. You said like validating that, right? Like the way read what you're saying is essentially turning it from knowledge into wisdom,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And putting yourself around people who have actually done it.
yeah.
And even just based on that, like curious, like if you've had like some of the best masterminds you've been to, like key takeaways, anything you're willing to share, would love to know.
Yeah, I'll say the biggest thing that I've seen about scaling your business, because again, every mastermind I've had at different levels, but it's really about your team, right? And I think a lot of people have that I'm the founder, I'm gonna be a face of it, everything needs to roll by me. But the way the business is effective is where you've had experts for each of the roles that you're hiring for, where you just focus on one thing, which is being a visionary, if that's your preference. I know for me, I'm the visionary, I'm the connector. I know where my business needs to go, what numbers we need to hit, what margins we need to hit, and what needs to be put in place to do that. But what I need, and this is why I really recommend people to do like these personality tests to understand your type of person that you are, is I need like an operator, an executor. I need someone that can be like, look, guys, we need to run out this marketing campaign, get these people in place and execute. Guys, there's this problem in the system. You need to fix the system and get it running. I think when you can now match that up with the right talent, and whether you poach talent or you train them up, that's when the business is impeccable. Because there's only so much you can do by yourself. Having the right team around you will allow you to scale. But there's so many I think unintentional gems I've learned just about what is possible as well. But yeah, I could go on for decades about that. But it's beneficial in so many different ways, man.
No, I'm sure you could, and I like how that's the one you picked out because again, it goes back to the golden thread, right? And
Yeah,
everything about connecting people, networking with people, being able to provide value to people, and
yeah,
how that comes back around. And I think even just finally on this topic, like mentorship, right?
yeah,
So you had an experience. Again, I'll let you it come from you, but you had an experience as a kid with a mentor that kind of showed you what was possible for the first time, at least in my reading. Now I know that you also mentor other people. You have that side to what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to know a bit about your experience both with mentors and as a mentor.
yeah, 100%, man. I think mentoring from, I guess I've had two main mentors that have been very life changing, right? My first one when I met when I was like 15, 16, the 6-year-old guy, which I was on about earlier, called Douglas, really amazing guy. And he more so was my mentor in terms of my mindset. Introduced me to property, that I can actually get into property, introducing me to networking, into that belief, into what I can actually achieve, right? Then my other mentor, one called James. he was more so my mentor on actual practicality of, you know, seeing all of the things that I've learned and actually seeing it come into fruition, right? I've noticed, although I still done really well with my first mentor, really, really well, that was more like a free mentorship where I was giving him value and he was giving me return. But with my paid mentor, that's when I started seeing real money, right? And every time I do invest into mentors, I do. And I think it's because, I put my money in the line, I've got to make it work. Even my second mentor, sorry, I actually borrowed money from my uncle of mine to pay him, right? So literally my money was on the line. I had no money. I had to make it work. So back to when I started mentoring, again, I saw that so many people were getting wrong advice when it came to property and things like that and building businesses. And not only, okay, wrong advice is probably is not the right word I should be using. I think they were getting advice that wasn't practical to them, right? They're getting advice maybe from like a 70-year-old guy born into a rich family about how to get into business. So there wasn't many people my age who were actually doing what I was doing. So it started off with just helping people, for at least before I started mentoring people for at least four years, people asked me for help. And with me, I'm very free with my time. I'm like, "Do you know what, guys, have a Zoom call with me." So I remember those weeks where I was like doing 20 hours a week of Zoom calls for free. And I'm just helping people. I remember one day a guy came to me like, "Denzil, you know that Zoom call session you had with me? I made like £7,000 from it. And I really appreciate it, bro. Can I book another one in for you?" And I was so happy for him. I was like, "That's amazing." And then one thing I realized there was like, it's taking too much of my time. I'm spending like 20, 30 hours a week. Then one time I said to people, I want to stop doing these Zoom calls. Just like, I want to post more gems on my Instagram and stuff. Then someone's like, "Denzel, please, like, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it." I thought I charged like £20 or whatever. And long story short, I noticed that with people that paid for it, they would get a lot more results than people that didn't pay for it. But I never really wanted to start property mentoring because I think of the whole perception of it. But someone said to me, like, "Look, if you have so much value to share and you know that it does work, and you at least tell people, look, before you join, I'm not guaranteeing you anything. This is just what I've worked and used and what you can apply and get similar results if you do apply it properly, then you're good." So again, I was very scared to start it because I was thinking, no, I don't want to be seen as one of those property guys who do it, or people think that's the only way I make money. So I made sure that I was doing property for at least 4 to 5 years before I started mentoring. But then, yeah, I started mentoring people, and then the results were incredible. And I think that was more so proof of concept. Like, look, okay, cool, yeah, I'm not a guru. I'm actually providing value, and I wasn't really marketing at the start, and I was really charging really, really cheap to do it. And over time, people just getting really good results. And I think seeing people quit their jobs, people who've never been on holiday now fly around the world, people who've achieved such great success through my mentoring, that's when I actually started to build a team around it, started hiring coaches, and turn it more so into an actual movement where I'm actually helping people. And I think what's different with what I do with my mentoring is that I really make it practical to that person. A lot of people who have a course is like, pay for a course and you just sit online and scroll through it. With me, you get a one-to-one coach, you get in-person events, you get, whereas even though it makes my margins very, very low, I know the user experience is amazing because they get more than I ever got from my mentor in terms of like actual practical one-to-one support where you can do deals with me, you can access my network, my team, come to my Gen Z events for free, because I wanted to make it really an experience rather than just someone who's just trying to sell an online program. So yeah, I started mentoring I think in 2024, like properly, and monetizing off it, and since then, yeah, it's been growing quite well. I've had loads of mentees doing really well. A guy I was spoken to the other day, he's done about 26 deals in 1 year, and again, deals you're charging that 3K plus. So it's like I'm happy that I'm able to help people do that, because without maybe access to myself, because he's been on many courses before, he might have achieved those same results. So yeah, that's what me and the mentoring.
That's sick, bro. Yeah, and I think it, it it's almost like you're passing the elevator down,
Yeah,
right? Because you had that experience, and we'll speak about mindset in a bit and how you were able to essentially use the situations in your life growing up to essentially give you the rocket fuel and the inspiration to go on to do what you've managed to do. But specifically with the mentoring, man, I was watching one of your vlogs the other day, and you said, like, you were in a room speaking to some guys, and you said something that really stood out to me. You said the concept of putting yourself in the flow of money and opportunities.
yeah,
So, yeah, like taking that to you, what did that look like in your life?
yeah. Really good question once again. I think a lot of people think they have to create something from scratch to make money. But I also want to be in a flow of money and opportunities, right? So when I started my first business, which was property, I knew that the opportunity was real estate, because no matter what career you're in, whether you're a footballer, whether you're an investment banker, your end goal is normally real estate. So that's the opportunity. Now, I knew that for me to get into real estate, I needed the money, which I didn't have. So I thought, how can I be in the flow of it where I don't actually have money, but I can help people with money to get real estate? Because you need money, real estate, and that now becomes a deal. So I thought, how can I be the person in the middle of that? To identify that people with money have the money, but they haven't got the time or the knowledge. And then there's real estate here ready to be sold. So I position myself in the flow of it where I can talk to these people with money, identify their pain points, and now provide a solution and sell them a property deal. And that's why I started my property sourcing business, because I became that middleman for property. I think a lot of businesses in life which are slept on are middleman businesses. You know, for someone who's, for example, doing editing, photography, all these things, middleman businesses that are connecting people from a pain point to their desired destination, the best businesses to start. And that's why I started it, to be fair. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the agency concept, right?
Yeah.
Essentially being able to plug someone with something that they need and get a cut within that. And it's interesting, right? Because, we can speak about property for a bit now, because the way I see it nowadays, this middleman concept that you just brought up is what most people will tell you to start online, right? Whether it's a drop shipping store, SMMA, it's one of the 50 other types of agencies that people push nowadays. Like, it's essentially that,
Yeah.
connecting and middlemaning. But equally, you got exposed to the world of property. You saw what it could be through that first mentor you had. When you left from him and you kind of went on in your own, and you mentioned like the 6-7 months where you couldn't find any kind of deals, what did that period in the trenches actually look like for you in practice, right? Because now it's easy to say like, oh, 6-7 months I was doing all this,
Yeah.
you know, but in practice during that time when it was kind of, the darkest hour, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was tough, man, because I think at the time as well, from the situation I came in, I needed money. I didn't get into business because I wanted to. I needed money, for my family and stuff. And I feel like it was hard. And obviously, luckily, I had a job at the time, which I was working part time with. So I was literally asking for extra shifts. But I kept applying the principles my mentor told me, because although I wouldn't say I ever left that mentor, because I still talk to him till today, but naturally, as I'm getting busier, he's getting busier. We're not speaking as much. But one thing with him, he always taught me the principles of the person you have to become to achieve these goals. The more you're desperate, you're gonna repel it. And he always said to me, "Look, Denzel, become that person, believe it and attract it." And I started applying those principles. So I remember before I started getting deals, I was just like talking to people, just like, I need this deal, I need this deal. I wasn't really understanding how it works properly. But I remember when I got my second mentor, and I was remembering principles from my old mentor about mindset and my new one about practicality, and just putting them two together. So though it was difficult, I learned a lot about myself. I learned about the triggers. I learned about how to approach conversations, and I learned a lot from rejection. I'm so happy I didn't win after my first month, because right now some of the scripts that I have when it comes to property is from all of my rejections. And a lot of people in life, when they get rejected, they see it as like the end of the world, but rejection has taught me more than any win has, learning what not to do, right? And I think one thing I always hear is that a real entrepreneur can lose it all and make it back. So I feel like being in that period where I've done deals before, but I did the deals for like 6-7 months, it really humbled me, number one. But number two, it really made me to change my way of thinking, change my way of approaching situations. Because again, I was around 17, 18, young black boy, didn't speak posh. So I understand why people didn't trust me. But again, it now taught me how to talk in a way which is actually appealing to my ideal client or my ideal landlord. And again, get the deals from that. So yeah, it was a tough experience at the time. But looking back at it, I'm so grateful it happened. Even till today, like, even though I've built good businesses, we still have loads of points where I get stuck. And I'm when I come out the other side, it's so beneficial, because it's now like I'm a big believer in God does things for a reason. Like he does things so you can actually learn and adapt your ways, because we always think that this is the right way, but sometimes you need to adapt. And that's why that can happen. So and the last example with that is like, even quickly back to Gen Z, like I remember the time went from a monthly event to a yearly event. So quarterly events was when we was doing monthly events. Then we started getting less and less numbers. That's because people thought, oh, if I miss this one, I've got one next month. And I'm so happy that happened, because that now allowed us to change our business model and thinking instead of doing 100 every single month to doing 400 or 500 every quarter. So again, a lot of times that road block is just a temporary delay. You know, all you need to do is change your direction, and I can go from there. So yeah,
Yeah, the obstacle is the way.
100% obstacles the way. Really good book as well. Yeah,
Ryan Holiday,
yeah,
great
yeah,
one.
yeah.
But yeah, bro, I mean, just to kind of give it the time I think it deserves on the property space,
Yeah.
if you could break down in the most basic, like stupid proof terms possible, what does your property sourcing business do? And essentially just like, yeah, describe the market a bit.
Yeah, so with me, I've got a property ecosystem of businesses, right? And they all kind of link with each other. So I started off with property sourcing, and property sourcing is essentially working with someone who wants a property deal. I find a deal and I charge my fee. So let's say you have got money to invest, you haven't got the time, I find it and charge you the fee. The second property business is like a rent to rent business where I work with landlords and it's kind of like I have an agreement where I rent the property with them and then I use it for maybe like a student HMO or for like let's say a service departments. And I make my profit on top, right? So sometimes I might get a deal and source it, but if I really want to take it on, I'll take it on. The third business is my property luxury business. And that's more so like it's basically sourcing but at a higher scale. Instead of doing deals which is like 100K, 200K deals, I'm working on properties which are typically 3, 4 million pound plus with high end buyers trying to buy property. Then obviously fourth is the mentoring. But they all work well together because as me, I built a brand and a network of property people. And if someone, for example, wants to learn about property, I put them into the mentoring business. If they want to get an investment, the sourcing business. If they're like a really wealthy client, they get to the high net worth individual business. And if it's like a landlord, they could come to my rent to rent business. So it's kind of like an ecosystem. And that's the thing about multiple sources of income. People always say have multiple sources of income, but I would say it's within the same industry where you want to start off. You know, that's why I see a lot of agency owners that have an agency, coaching, then a software. Because although it's multiple sources of income, but it's all within the same ecosystem. So that's kind of like the way that I built it with a property business.
I like that, bro. And yeah, it's intentional,
Yeah,
right? And it's something that, because equally you say like multiple sources of income, which is great, and obviously that's the goal. But it's like, again, that was a big lesson from Chico. It's like, don't try to start all of them at once. Kind of build them up as you go along.
100%. And that's how I did it, man. I did, again, these ages aren't completely accurate, but just from what I can remember, property sourcing from, let's say, 17 to around 20-ish. Yeah, 17 to around 19. That's when I was mainly doing it. Then I started my Airbnb business around 19. So I developed sourcing business, sourcing deals. Then the one I wanted to take was from my Airbnb. So then the sourcing was a bit systemized. Then I had the Airbnb business. Then from there, it wasn't until like about 2 or 3 years later is when I started the luxury side of the property business where I was like, okay, cool, look, I've now had demand from higher end clients. Then started doing working with higher end deals. But again, the other two businesses were systemized. I've got operators for each business. And then is when I started the mentoring business because I saw the demand. But if I started at work at the same time, it wouldn't have worked. But it's about learning how to remove yourself from the business and hiring someone that can replace you to actually do what you need to do and make the business grow.
I mean, I think that's well put. 'Cause even one of the things I wanted to ask in general is just like how you approach delegation, right? Because from if you look from an outside lens, running Gen Z Club, 4 different branches of what you're doing with property, you're always thinking about the next move. You're always strategizing. So in essence, you can't be everywhere at once, and you don't have 48 hours in your day,
Yeah.
right? So how do you approach actually like delegating tasks, hiring people? Like, how does that work in your mind?
Yeah. I think every business needs a visionary, an operator, and a marketer. They're the key three things. So with each business, before I start a new one or move on to another branch, is to make sure that I have that in place for every single business. And I know for every business I'm the visionary, right? And that's because of my personality type. Some people they're engineers. They don't have the vision, they just know how to put the work in. But understanding your personality type is very important. So I know that I'm the visionary. So with each business, I just had to hire an operator and a marketer, right? So for example, with my sourcing business, I was the visionary. I knew how it works. Then actually someone I used to source deals with now became my operator. With my mentoring, funny enough, actually I was doing it by myself, but then one of my best ever mentees, they wanted to actually get the opportunity to work alongside me. And then now they're like my head of operations. With the Gen Z Club, I had two co-founders. I knew that I was good at vision. Other one was good at marketing. Other one was good at operations, and I worked with that. And with my luxury business, again, I'm the visionary. I've got amazing two agents who work with me, and they're the operators and executors. So when it comes to life and operating it, it doesn't actually drain me because all I'm doing is what I'm best at, which is the vision and providing it. So with each business, I can probably spend about 5 hours a week on it, just making overall decisions, putting the right people in place, having team meetings. And I know my team's operating. I know right now as I'm having this conversation, a deal's probably just closed with my sourcing business. A viewing's happening with my luxury business. A mentee's probably just been onboarded. And that's only because we've got the right systems in place. And it doesn't happen overnight. So I'm not trying to make it seem easier than it is. But it's about learning what your bottlenecks are and then delegating that bottleneck. I think a lot of people they hire too quickly and they overpay before they've even expanded. But I think get to that bottleneck, make sure you've done it first so you know how it needs to be done, and help people to replace you. And that way your business you'll have a lot of time and freedom to now work on the high level decisions to make the business grow even more.
I love that. And even just based on that, like what does a day-to-day day look like for yourself?
So I try to split it up into each business. So Mondays I'm only focused on the Gen Z club. So that's more so like again speaking with my events management team who runs the events for us, speaking with my co-founder. If I need to get involved in some partner meetings and client meetings, that's that. Tuesday is my mentoring business. I do a 2 hour call every Tuesday. And again, that one I normally like catch up with the team, reply to some messages in the Discord and stuff. I have my 2 hour call. Wednesday is a lot more in my luxury business. So like if I ever need to step in to do a VM with one of my agents, I would go to my office, which is in Mayfair, and talk meet up with my agents and help them oversee anything they need to oversee and do viewings. And then Thursday is more so catching up on the rest, which might be like the source and stuff and the rent and stuff. Like those two businesses are very like hands off. So I didn't do much, but again, you're just talking to the key stakeholders in those businesses and making the decisions. Then Friday, I fill in the gaps where I need to do. But I think one thing and again, this is all about the person that you want to become and the brand that you want to build. I built my brand in a way that my brand now affects every single business. The more I grow on YouTube, the more people want to, the more young entrepreneurs follow me, the more people come to the Gen Z Club and potential mentees. The more I post content about property, the more landlords come to me, the more investors come to me. So my real main goal and my main, I guess, task is to be the visionary and to create content. Then I think if you've got a system in place, you create that content, everything should now flourish from that. So all my goal is to create content. And I'm like, look, if I post out X amount of reels per week, X amount of YouTube videos per month, this is going to affect every single business positively. And that's because of the team that I have, which I got massive love for my team there. They're so amazing. So yeah.
No, that's beautiful. You've literally set things up so that you've removed yourself from the equation.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is literally bring eyeballs to it.
100%, man.
No, that's
100%.
sick. That's sick, bro. And even, just to start wrapping up on property, like if you were to make the argument, like why should someone get into property over different business models, online business models specifically? Like why do you think someone should?
I think because it's the one industry that's number one recession proof. It's applicable across the globe and it will never die down. Especially in the UK, right? We're on an island where there's, a lot of people coming into the UK but not enough stock. Right. So if you're positioning yourself into a market where, as I mentioned, no matter how wealthy you get, you're gonna buy a property. That's everyone's end goal. So my argument would be this is something that because again, with life, people only stick at things for 1 to 2 years. If you can stick into an industry for 10 to 20 years, you're gonna become an expert, right? So if instead of having a goal of let me build my career and then do property when I'm 40, but why don't you start property at 20? That by the time you're 40, you've overtaken the whole marketplace, right? So that's kind of like my philosophy for it. But again, it doesn't um depend on the type of person that you are. But I think as well it's about seeing where you fit in real estate. Real estate isn't, I would say, a property game. It's a people's game. So it's about understanding what part of yourself fits into real estate and building a business around that. And it doesn't have to just be sourcing what I'm doing. It could be, a lot of wealthy people, so you can now raise money to buy houses. It might mean that a lot of good cleaners, you can now create a cleaning company. So many businesses can be formed from the field of real estate. I think it's just like a massive ROI in all areas, from your network to the money that you make. And yeah, that's how I always vouch for real estate.
Nah, absolutely. And, even on that, what would you say are like basic traits that people need to succeed within that?
I'll say resilience. A lot of rejections in real estate. A lot of things can go wrong, so that's understandable. Number two is always to be willing to learn. There's constant changes into the market, into the taxes. Yeah. And then thirdly, I would say a people game. Understand people. Understand sellers. Why are they selling on the property right now? You know, how much would they want for their property to make it worthwhile? Why is someone trying to invest? Is it for their family? Is it for investment? Why do they want 3 beds instead of 4 beds? So really understand the human psychology. Once you master that as well, it makes property so much easier.
And what would you say separates someone who is good within that space and someone who is excellent?
Time in the market. And what I mean by that is, as I mentioned, people just jump from industry to industry and they don't actually make any significant progress. If you can stick to something for at least 10 years, which seems long to us Gen Zs, because we want things in 1 year. But if you can stick to something for 10 years, it's impossible not to be successful, in my opinion. So I think what separates people is constant action over a long period of time. That's the compound effect, man. And I think that's what's going to make people from great to excellent.
No, I love that. And yeah, man, I think that ties into, the last big point that I really wanted to touch on, which is mindset.
Yeah.
And how essentially, like you've said it a few times, but the way I understand it to be is like be before you become.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially embody the type of person that is able to achieve the goals that you set for yourself.
100%.
And even, if you look at yourself now, 23, you're young, you've been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, success came to you pretty quickly, right? In terms of like how old you are in life.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
No,
Cool.
of course,
Oh,
you've
yeah.
been in the game for like
Yeah.
almost 8 years.
Yeah.
You're 23, but started super young.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But, the point I'm trying to make with that is a lot of guys that are your age that have achieved the type of numbers, or in some cases, a tenth of the numbers you've done, would go out flexing, would go out buying a bunch of stuff, would go out trying to live it up and show it off as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
Why would you say that? Yeah, like what has led you to have the approach that you have?
Yeah, I think actually tackling that first of all, actually, I think it's interesting that you made that observation because a lot of people would say to me, Denzel, like, so one thing I always get asked is, Denzel, why don't you have like a mad expensive watch? Like, I always just heard like my Apple Watch and stuff. I think it's because back to what I was saying, like everyone has different forms of validation. I feel like a lot of people that I know who splash the most money, they're doing it for validation. A lot of them were bullied when they were younger, so they now have to get the best watch or the best car for validation. But my aim for money has always been given back because growing up when we were in a very bad situations through my family, financially, we always had help. So my reason of making money was never to flex because I just want to help more people get to where I've now become, even though I'm still nowhere near where I want to be. And that's why like a lot of my money gets invested into obviously learning and rebuilding my businesses and educating myself. My family, that's probably like the biggest thing that my business goes to, whether it's giving them money or creating experiences, organizing dinners and paying for it. Because with me, I'm a family person because yes, you can have 10 supercars, but having 10 family members at a dinner, not worrying about the bill, that's best for me. Holidays, again, growing up, I went on no holidays. I probably went to France twice. That's it. So now I travel every quarter. So I spend on that. And fourthly, I reinvest into my businesses. I remember this Snapchat group chat I had with all my friends growing up called Ecosystem. They always call me Mr. Ecosystem because again, my goal in life is again, a lot of these cliche sayings are so true. It's lonely at the top. It's so lonely because there's certain things that I'll give you an example, like the gym I go to, David Lloyd's, yeah. I always complain that I haven't got a gym partner, but it's because none of people that I would want to go gym with that live near me can necessarily afford my gym, for example. And that's that staying lonely at the top. And there's loads of examples like that. So my goal is how can I use the money that I've made and the knowledge that I've made to help my friends build up their businesses. So like my mum, I've helped her build a business. My other friend, he left his job a month ago to start. He's built a marketing agency. I've given him dozens of clients from that. My other friend left a big job at a big corporate firm. He's now traveling the world doing content and he's created his own agency. So again, my goal for my money is to how can I now put maybe a little bit of money into my friend's business or to give them clients to help them to grow. So to answer your question, the reason I don't flex is because that's not validation to me. I don't care about flexing. Yes, I invest into like my, and again, everyone has different forms of validation, should I say? Because mine might be like dressing smart. Like if you see how many suits and smart shoes I have, how much I spent on them, and my t-shirts, you guys will probably think, Denzel, you're crazy. But that to me is an ROI because it makes me feel good, and also it now presents me in a better light when it comes to working with my clients. But I'm not the type to spend now 10K on designer. I've got maybe one designer shoes, and that was bought for me as a gift. So it's like I don't really seek validation in that. Yes, I'll still drive a nice car and stuff like that, but again, I'm very smart on my money. And I think that's because I didn't have much money growing up. So I'm now trying to protect it as much as I can and see how I can multiply it.
Oh, I love that, man. And again, with the cliche sayings, but there's the one that's like, money amplifies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I guess for yourself, again, going back to the golden thread, connecting people, helping people out, giving back,
Yeah,
right? You just mentioned you used to have people that helped you. Now you want to be in the position to help other people. Like,
so,
that's what it's allowing you to do, as opposed to, like, in the end of the day, do something that is just not you,
yeah,
right? Because to become who you've become, to achieve what you've achieved, the kind of mindset that would lead you to go to that kind of spending isn't what would have taken you there in the first place.
100%, man. I think that's why I don't judge people, man, because everyone actually has their own reasons, their own upbringings. And it's crazy how you can even be in the same household as someone. Like I'm very different to some my siblings, for example. Like, I'm very different to them, despite a similar upbringing. But again, it might be because I'm the youngest child, so I've always been babied. So now I've always felt that love where the oldest child hasn't felt that love. So they're more like selfish. Not saying that calling my siblings selfish because they're not, but they might be more selfish compared to me because I'm used to receiving, but they might be the people who are struggling before I even came into this world. So everything like in life, and this is all about understanding human psychology, right? And really understanding why people are the way they are. Because as you mentioned, money only amplifies that. And that's so important when hiring. Like when I hire based on your beliefs, your ways of thinking, and just your characteristics. I get everyone to do like personality trait tests because I want to know who I'm working with. I want to know why do you think that way? Because if now, for example, I know you're emotional, which is understandable, and I don't know, let's say you break up with your partner, I know that next week you're going to be doing no work, and I'm not going to now gun you for that because I understand that person that you are. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think really understanding human psychology is a big skill, man. Really big skill.
For sure. And I like what you said about the personality types, because I think it was last year I was reading one of Patrick Bet-David's
Oh,
books,
amazing, yeah.
and he was speaking about how he essentially gets people to do like love language tests.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so similar to how you've described like the personality test, I'm assuming it's like the Myers-Briggs one, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
ENT,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
So with him, it's like, if he understands that your love language is touch, he might be more keen to give you a hug. If he understands it's words of affirmations, he's going to make sure that he's praising you,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So again, it's understanding profiles to understand how to deal with them
yeah.
in the workspace.
100%, man. 100%.
So a quote of yours that I picked out from one of your videos that I'd love for you to expand on. I have a mentality of anything that I want, I can get.
Yeah.
So how would you say, like, more than anything, how do you think you were able to develop that within yourself?
I think again, and it's not bad compared to people in the rest of the world, but I think but going through what I've gone through at a certain age from a financial level and come out the other side and being able to achieve what I've been able to achieve, I think it's just that, like having so many small wins of proof of concepts, which has now made me think. And I'm a big believer of God, like a big believer. And Bible verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I genuinely believe if you generally have the belief, you put an action plan and you work at it consistently, I think it's impossible not to achieve it, man. And I use the word impossible very intentionally because I think anything in life you can actually achieve. Like no one would have thought 300 years ago that you can have podcasts, you can FaceTime people. Like these things seemed absurd, but it's now a reality and it's normal. I think it's just about the mindset shift. So I think with me, it's always about what do I want to achieve and how can I reverse and engineer it and achieve it in the shortest period of time. So even as I mentioned with real estate, I knew that after footballer, I wanted to get into real estate. So let me just start it now and work on it because I knew that by the time I'm 23, 24, 25, I actually did say 30, but I said by the time I'm 30, I'll be making X amount, which I was able to do at an early age. But it's because I had that mindset of I can do anything. And that's allowed me to be bold in rooms. Again, some of the clients that I'm working in, But on paper, I shouldn't even be working with them. Like me, a normal guy, young guy from grew up in a single parent household, I'm now managing real estate for someone who's worth 50 million. It doesn't really make sense. But because of my mentality, I'm now I don't have that imposter syndrome anymore because I don't know that literally I'm backed by God. I've got the skill set. I put the work in so I can achieve anything. And that's the same with anyone who's watching this as well. Like I feel like if you generally have a plan in life and you now can actually put the actual steps in place, and the most important thing is stick at it for a long enough time, you can achieve it, man. That's my belief.
Very well put. And I think, I mean, another cliche saying, but competence breeds confidence,
Yeah.
right? So, like, the better you get at it, the more reps you put in, the more,
So
as you mentioned, rejections that you can then view as objections that you can then plan for in the future, the more you're going to feel confident in yourself to back in. And the more wins you get along the way, the more confident you get that you can do the next one.
100%, man. 100%.
Okay, so this is from, remember that conversation we had the other day when we met?
Yeah. Yep.
You basically told me that you had gone to I don't know if it was a private school, but a good school growing up.
Yep.
And, at home, you were in the kind of financial situation that you were in. You learned from your wealthy mentor, but at home, you're in the financial situation you were in. So I wanted to ask you about that kind of contrast, right? Because, I said it to you the other day, but that situation in life where you're struggling financially, but around you, you can see what is possible and you can aspire to reach those kinds of levels. Like, how would you say that kind of shaped you in your journey?
Yeah, it was really good. So for context, I went to a primary school where, because of the area that I was in, a lot of people were very, very successful. Like people were going on holiday every single week. Before Dubai was even Dubai, they were going to Dubai. They were traveling in first class before I even knew what it was. And when I would go to my friends' houses, they would live on like farms with tractors, with 10 cars, and I was living in like a house where I even struggled to have heating for some nights. I have to boil the kettle to wash. So I think it was interesting because I had that survival mindset from home, and you could say I was limited by my environment. But then going to the primary school I had and seeing the way people were living, I knew that there was another life that was possible. And I've always been a curious person. And again, this didn't relate to business initially, but I think, and this is what I always say about masterminds as well. It's like one thing that can change your mind of thinking. I remember speaking to this person's dad from my primary school. I think this was about year 6. I like to him, like, you've got a really good family, you're doing all this. Like, I think I asked him 2 questions. How much do you need to be making to live the life that you're living? And what do you recommend me doing in the future? He said, obviously, I don't like sharing this with you, but I like that you're young. And I promise you, I think I nearly dropped to the floor. I said, how? He said, £40,000 a month, roughly is how much he's making. I said, what? Because the most I've known someone make in my life is like 20K a year. I said, £40,000 a month. He said, yeah, like, and plus bonuses. I was like, wait, what? And then he said, look, just work in an industry where you're working with money. And again, I was very young, so I didn't really understand that. But what I think he was trying to say from that is like, work in an industry where big players with wealth. And that's why it's normally like, so he was an investment banker. So that's, or a stockbroker, one of the two. But yeah, that's where the wealth came in with property. And I think that expanded my mindset. Because I remember when I heard that, I just knew that I'm going to achieve something great. And if I didn't hear that, I don't know what I could be doing today. So many things within my journey. I'm a really big believer of right time, right place, or God put you in the right time, right place. Where that one word or that one sentence has changed the whole perspective on life. I remember that day. I said to my mum, we're going to be good. Because I had that confidence that I didn't know how. I didn't know I would even do property. I just knew that would be good. And I think from then, it sparked an interest for me to really pursue self-development. So from like year 8, I was listening to Tony Robbins. I was listening to all these mindset things because I really wanted to know what's possible, because a lot of us, we let ourselves get defined by environments, but we shouldn't. That should give us fuel to now change our situation and help other people from our environment. And that was my mission. It's like, look, I've seen the way my mom suffered working 2, 3 jobs. I've seen the way that a lot of my family members and my friends, not even just my family, my friends, are struggle to even, I don't know, afford to go on school trips compared to my other friends. So let me not make this the norm for us, right? And that's what I think allowed me to really dive into the whole world of learning. So from young, I was literally looking at most high paying jobs. Like, I was always trying to learn about how to make more. Like I remember I was the first time my friends, I think, to get a job. and I got the best pay. I think at 17 I was getting paid £8.50 an hour. At the time, my friends were getting paid like £5 an hour. But it's because I was always just. I think that really instilled a hustler in me, to be fair, and understanding how things can work. And even like I had friends that I playing for a football team. Again, I remember this guy's dad who'll come in a Porsche and stuff. And again, just all of these things were just like kind of like that realignment that look, it's possible. I'm seeing these things for a reason because I want to be there one day. So yeah, man.
That was beautifully put, bro. And I think, yeah, it's what I was saying to you the other day. Like, when you have a situation like the one you just described, where your situation is X and
Yeah,
you're looking at a different situation, which is 1 million X,
yeah,
you can either grow resentful towards it
yeah,
and not want anything to do and reject it and ultimately play the victim card by doing that, or you can see it as inspiration and
100%.
aspire to grow that way. And I don't think it's a given that people do.
Yeah,
So yeah, bro, no, huge, props to you. And
yeah, man.
I'll speak about it more, but I think the last main point before starting to wrap up, you mentioned about planning,
Yeah,
right? And again, a quote from you: "Without a plan, you're planning to fail."
yeah.
Um,
I like how you've done the research. It's good, man.
I had
It's
to,
good.
bro. I had
It's
to
good.
come up here and pick your mind on things. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned even like you broke down your schedule just now and how you have like a day for each of the businesses and each of the different things you do. So I guess like when you project ahead, right? Like when you're planning for the next few stages, whether that's for Gen Z Club, whether that's for the property business and all its branches, whether that's for your personal brand and what you're looking to do there. Like, yeah, I don't know if you like speaking about what's to come and future goals, but like, yeah, what are you
Yeah.
planning?
So with plan, just to quickly say how I do plan, I always look at the 10-year goal and plan. And I know it's hard to kind of see what's happening in 10 years, but I'll look firstly, what do I want to achieve in 10 years? Like what will my life look like in 10 years and how does that in my life? Then me being the um efficient person I am, I'm like, okay, cool, how can I half that? I make that happen in 5 years, right? So that 10-year plan is now my 5-year plan. Then that now comes to my yearly plan. Okay, cool. What I need to achieve every single year. Then my quarterly plan, then my monthly plan, then my weekly plan. So now what I need to focus on is what I need to do every single day to achieve my weekly goals, every single week to achieve my monthly goals, every single month to achieve my yearly goals, then every single year to achieve my goal for every 5 years. I think that's the way I approach life. So now I know that if I'm constantly doing it every single day, compound effect, I want to now achieve my. It's impossible not to achieve. I always say the word impossible. It's impossible not to achieve that goal by applying that, right? But to answer your question, yeah. So each of my businesses I have a goal for, right? DJPS Lux, which is my business of helping high net individuals buy property £3 million plus in London. My goal is to really expand that, maybe get a team of around 10 agents, and I want us to be known as the go-to people for new money. So what I mean by new money is typically, your footballers, your rappers, your people who just made money from e-com, from the agencies, who are maybe 35 and younger, millionaires. I want to be that go-to person, and I want to represent them not just in the UK, but across the world. If they're like, Denzel, I just bought a £3 million house off you in Chelsea, I also want to buy a house off you in Dubai. I'm their go-to person. My Gen Z club, I want to build a massive community. It's already quite a big community. We've got about 10 to 15,000 Gen Zs. But I want us to take over the UK and also Europe. But I've also noticed that expanding it internationally, one, require a lot of funding and two, a lot of experience. So what I'll probably look at in the future, and what we are actually looking at, is exiting the business. But it might not be a full exit, it might be like a merger. There's different ways you can do this. And that's because we feel like we can now fulfill the potential by working with like another private equity firm or something who can now obviously take over the business, maybe have us all as consultants or whatever. The sourcing investment business, that's again still running as a cash flow. And again, I don't really do much with that. We're the same with the rental business, and that's just gonna run. And I mentioned business, I've been conflicted. I think I love the impact that I've been able to do with people, and I'm really getting the results for people. But at the same time, I feel like although I don't spend as much time on it, I still feel like it is still another thing to think about. So I think I have a mission to help 100 people become financially free property sourcing. I think once that's done, I think I'll probably stop that side of mentoring and just maybe have like gems on my YouTube, which I already do, but just like more free gems and not fully. But again, I'm not too sure of that at the moment because there's pros and cons to it, I guess. But yeah, that's what I'll say my goal. I think my main goal is more so like prepare my life into a way where it's gonna align with my future goals. I want to get married young, build a good family, And one thing that I sometimes say to myself is like, okay, cool. Do I want to be doing this when I have a wife and kids type thing? And just kind of working backwards as to, okay, cool. What thing don't I kind of like me for myself and not and I still have present when I am married with kids. So again, just make sure that I'm working towards that end goal as well.
I love how intentional you are
Yeah.
about the approach, bro. And I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You don't need me to tell you. Like in the end, you can make plans, and the next day, life throws a curveball at you, and you don't know, what to do. But yeah, bro, I think you're definitely heading in the right direction. You've already done so much at your age, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 years bring, bro.
No, I really appreciate that, man. Thank you for that.
Two finishers
Yep.
that I like to always ask. But I mean, firstly, if you could speak to a past version of yourself that was going through a tough time, whenever that was, you don't need to reveal. But what advice would you give to that past version of yourself?
I'll say stay close to God. Really, really have faith and believe that everything will be okay. And then think of solutions. Don't be too tied up in emotions. Think of solutions and stick at that solution for a long period of time. And actually for the compound effects, it'll work out. Whether it's your health, whether it's your family, whether it's your life, wherever it is, there's always, there's always a blessing on the other side of hardship. And I'm a very big believer of that. And just see what is God trying to make you learn from that situation. It's not about God's putting me through suffering, but what's God teaching me? What's God developing me into? Because there's times I'd have to maybe motivate my mum when she's upset. And I need that God to motivate me to become a leader and all that while I'm leading a team. There was times where I had to work out how we're gonna get money to afford bread. That's now God helping me to be more resourceful. So again, all these things that you go through, I think what is God trying to teach you and building you to become that future version of yourself.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think the whole angle on God, faith, etc., is something we could have done a whole episode
Yeah,
about.
100%.
And maybe that's a opportunity to run it up
Yeah,
in future as well.
100%, man.
But yeah, bro, I mean, any last message, anecdote, story, quote that you want to leave the viewer with?
I think, yeah, man, live your own race, man. I think a lot of things online that you see is not as it seems. A lot of people inflate their things, and it's very easy to have that comparison. Don't rush yourself, man. Just work towards your goal and do it for you. Don't do it for other people. If you see, just because you see your friend driving a Mercedes, then you have to get one. Although I was probably the highest earner in my friendship group, I was the last to get a good car. And it's because I knew what I was doing it for. I could have got a car straight away and whatever, but I knew that despite me earning X, Y, Z, that wasn't validating me. It's only when I felt like I really wanted to treat myself is when I did it. So I think same thing with like holidays. A lot of these party holidays my friends went on, I'm not judging them for it. You're young, you got to enjoy yourself. But I didn't go into it because I remember I was so locked in. People be like, Denzil, like, why didn't you go out much anymore in uni? There was a phrase I just stopped going out. I stopped going to parties because I knew I wanted to achieve. And a lot of people that were complaining, called me boring at the time, then are the ones messaging me, asking me for a job. And I'm not saying that in like a cheeky or excited way, but I'm just saying like sometimes you got to make this temporary sacrifices to have that long term game, man. So just work on your own lane and everything will work out in the end.
1,000%. Yeah. And I think that last message of working on your own lane, understanding yourself, having the self-awareness, right? Like going back to the very start, you identified this superpower, excellent ability that you have to connect people. You managed to build vehicles that brought you to wealth around that superpower that you have for yourself, interpreting the hardships, as you mentioned, and being able to shape yourself out of that to become the person that you wanted to become, to achieve the things that you wanted to achieve.
Yep.
Like that's yeah, bro, very powerful. And as I said, like I think you're someone who, I mean, I'm very grateful we had this opportunity to do this together, to
Thank you.
actually have gotten to know you properly. And I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the coming months and years to come. But yeah, bro, someone that I rate very highly, someone that I also think has a lot more to give and show to themselves than they're currently doing,
Yep.
which is crazy to think about considering how much you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, bro, huge pleasure and really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. And this has probably been my favorite interview in terms of questions, like not just typical question, but really actually being able to actually understand why I think the way I think and reflect on a lot of things. So no, I really appreciate it, man, for hosting a great podcast today.
Love it, bro. Thank you. And on that note, if you want to watch another episode with Muhiz, who is someone like Denzel, who's very young, doing very well for himself in a completely different lane, you can check out that episode right here.